I'd now like to introduce the 2015 Vince Scully Lifetime Achievement Award winner, Doc Emrick. Congratulations.
Thank you. Thank you so much. It's a treat to be here.
Now, I just introduced you as Doc Emrick. Now, your real name is Mike Emrick. Now, first, let's start with this. Where did this nickname originate? And what's the difference between Mike Emrick and Doc Emrick?
Well, I call myself Mike, and my wife calls me Mike. Family calls me Mike. But it came from having finished a doctoral degree in Bowling Green in 1976. It's not a really creative name. Anybody that goes through medical school gets the same nickname that I do. So I don't think it's terribly creative, but it's flattering that people would acknowledge the work that you went through to do something like that. But I answer to either one, and I guess people back home only knew me as Mike, so that's what they say.
There you go. Now you're set to receive this award, as we were talking about. And when Vin called you, what was your reaction, and what does it mean to receive this award?
Well, it was a shock. It was in early March, and we winter in Bradenton, and I commute to NBC assignments out of there. And my wife likes Bradenton a lot, and I like the fact the Pirates are only 14 minutes away from where we live. So when they're training, I can go over any day I want to that I'm not working. We were there and had just gotten back. My brother was down for a week to watch baseball, and we had just gotten back, and the phone rang. It was my cell phone. And the voice at the other end said, "Hi, Mike, Vin Scully here in Los Angeles, California. I'll bet you're wondering why I'm calling you today." And I did. Vin and I have never met, had never had a conversation until he called me that day, and it was memorable. So my brother is a lifelong Dodger fan from the days in Brooklyn, and I was very pleased to hang up and walk out and tell him, "I just got a call from your announcer," and he was quite excited for me. And that's the best thing about it so far. Until the award is handed to me, it's clearly the best thing was the phone call from Vin.
That's an absolutely great story. Now, you've called numerous events, the Olympics, 25 consecutive Stanley Cup playoffs, I believe, 23 playoff Game 7s, and 14 Stanley Cups. That's a lot. Is there one broadcast throughout your career that stands out to you from the rest?
I can't think of anything right now. I guess what I usually do in answering a question like that is go back to the most recent one. And Detroit and Tampa Bay in Game 7 last year was pretty special, only because the game was still 0-0 going into the third, and you oftentimes don't have that. And I'm sure Detroit thought all summer, if we'd only scored on our chances in the first two, Tampa wouldn't have been in the final. Maybe we would have. That was something of a memory for me. But then you wind up with Chicago and the excitement and the tornadoes touching down and the Stanley Cup not there, somewhere on the Kennedy Expressway, which was closed, trying to get there, and finally Patrick Kane scores to make it 2-0. Now the league is really worried. But it did arrive, and it did arrive just in time. So I guess that was the most recent memory I had was that Game 6 between Chicago and Tampa. I loved both teams, and the coaches were so good to work with. You know, a lot of times your working conditions make a big difference in how you feel about everything, and we were just blessed with two great organizations that were willing to cooperate.
Now, you're from a small town in Indiana, LaFontaine, I believe it's how it's pronounced. And to follow your passion, you went all around the country, I believe, even Maine. I was impressed with that. Now, I imagine these years of your life were not the easiest. Can you kind of talk about the lead up to your career as a broadcaster?
Yeah, it's when you need to spend the most money on yourself that you don't have it, but you come up with it anyway. And at that time, audio cassettes cost about $2.50 in 1960s dollars. So now we're talking about $15 a piece. Well, you want to get them to as many teams as possible, but you can't afford to. So I sent letters to a lot of them. It was the era of snail mail, and I would send tapes to the ones that I thought I had a shot at, and I have the rejection letters still. I located another 40 of them last week from the 1970s, because most of them were from the late 1960s. So I must have had 100 snail mail rejection letters, and you just keep pressing on, and you hope that someday the shoe will drop and you'll get in. There was a guy named John Wismer in Port Huron, Michigan. His brother Harry owned the New York Titans in the American Football League. And when Harry got a team in the AFL, John got a team of his own in the IHL in hockey. And he ran the radio station there, and I got a call from him one day at Bowling Green saying, come up and we'll talk about it. I walked into his office and he said, what's this going to cost me? Well, I didn't know how to negotiate a contract, and it wasn't a written contract, it was a handshake. I said, $160 a week, and he slammed his hand down on the desk and said, that'll be fine. I thought, okay, so there I am. Obviously, I've made a mistake here. So before we were done that day, I said, can we reopen the negotiations on that salary? And he said, he chuckled because he knew he had me, and he said, let's put it this way. I'm going to listen to you for 6 months. If I like what I hear, you'll get another $20 a week. After 12 months, if I like what I hear still, you'll get another 20 beyond that. He was good to his word, but he wasn't going to give in. So the first rule of negotiating is let somebody else name the first price. Took me a long time to remember that.
Last question for you, Doc. 153 words you used in the Sochi Olympics to describe the puck movement. Now,
is that right? 153?
153. That's what I counted.
Yeah.
It wasn't me counting, but someone else constructed it.
With not much time on their hands, right?
Apparently
like
not.
Ton.
Now, my favorite was pitchforked. I like that one a lot, but is there one phrase that stands out to you that you like the most, and where does this creative language come from?
No, it just comes from the actions I see on the ice. For example, pitchforked is undoubtedly when there's a backhand lift of the puck from center ice. Hammered is a big shot by somebody, because if it weren't a big shot, it wouldn't be a hammer. Rick Tocchet had a shot where he drew way back, like about 180 to 250 degrees, and followed through. So I called Rick's big slap shot hatcheted, because it looked like somebody drawing back a hatchet, George Washington cutting down the cherry tree. They all come from legitimate things that happen on the ice, but when I was in Dayton, Ohio, watching games in graduate school at Miami, Lyle Stieg, who was the Dayton announcer, said, if you can come up with a different way to say the same things that happen over and over in a hockey game, that's a good thing, because otherwise you'll drive people nuts. If every time it's lifted in from center, you say it's dumped in. If every time it happens that way, you say it's dumped in, you'll drive people crazy. Well, I didn't want to drive people crazy, so.
Corey Miller alongside Doc Emrick, the winner of the 2015 Vince Scully Lifetime Achievement Award. Doc, thank you and congratulations.
Thank you so much, Corey.